With us is Tom Davis, former congressman from Northern Virginia and often rumored to be running for governor or maybe taking on Senator Tim Kaine or something like that. Speaking of Senator Kaine joining us now from Washington. Senator, you're with the boys. Good to have you, sir.
John, I'm glad to talk, and I'm glad that you are in scenic Chap Tower in Fairfax City.
We are in Chap Tower. We've got a lot to cover with defense bills and things like that, Syrian refugees. But look, we got to get to politics right off the bat. Big win last night for your candidate, Hillary Clinton, in the Golden State. Now she is going to be the nominee. Bernie Sanders, though, making another defiant speech last night. When are you just going to call your friend Bernie Sanders up and give him a big hug and get all this done?
You know, here's what I think, John. Having been in competition, even a primary against friends, I know it's tough and adrenaline flows and tensions are high, but I've got a great deal of confidence in Bernie. I think he spoke last night and said, look, the math is hard now, and I think he's going to realize that. And Bernie's a very sincere guy, and everything that Donald Trump stands for, Bernie is opposed to. So I think he will reach the point where he is going to be a strong asset to the Clinton campaign and to our effort to win in November. And whether that's in 48 hours or a couple of weeks, I don't know. But I don't have much doubt that he's going to be there and do everything he can to convince his supporters to be there, too.
Okay, well, he says he's going to do nothing until after the D.C. primary next week. We'll see how it plays out. We'll be live covering the Democratic convention in Philadelphia. By the way, I'll also be live next week for the Democratic Party of Virginia convention and the Jefferson-Jackson dinner. We're going to be live at that also. Senator, let's get to your two initiatives yesterday. I know we're on the same page. We've been talking about this for some time in the National Defense Authorization Act. You want to tack an amendment that finally says, look, we cannot keep sending our young men and women to fight in these battles or wars without authorization from Congress, but nobody will do anything. We've been talking about this, Senator, for 18 months. It's still the same old story. Why are these amendments going to make a difference?
Well, John, you're right. I mean, the president started the bombing campaign against ISIL August 8th, 2014, so we're coming up on 22 months of unauthorized war, and it's of huge concern, and it should be concern to everybody in this country. So far, though, I've only been able to build a small bipartisan group who agrees with me. So Jeff Flake in the Senate, a bipartisan group of House members led by Virginian Scott Ridgell, we have been pushing both bodies to finally do a war authorization. So the defense authorizing bill, I know you have Congressman Davis there, Tom knows this well. This is the one bill that passes every year. When anything, other things may not pass, but the defense authorizing bill does. It's on the floor of the Senate right now, and I have put two amendments in. The first one is the amendment that I had with Jeff Flake to finally authorize the military action against ISIL. And the second is an amendment that says the 2001 authorization against al-Qaeda should sunset in 2019, and that as a way of forcing the next president to submit to Congress a revised authorization so we could grapple with how to define the war against non-state terrorist actors like al-Qaeda and ISIL 18 years after the attacks on 9/11. We basically, as Congress, just handed an open check to the administration to wage executive war without congressional permission, and the president is now using that 2001 authorization in not just Iraq and Afghanistan, but Syria, Yemen, the Horn of Africa, the Horn of Africa, the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, and so it's time for Congress to reassert some control. I'm hoping that we can get a favorable vote on one or both of these, but I got to tell you, my colleagues in Congress still would rather just criticize the president and not stand up and be counted yes or no. So it's an uphill battle, but we're going to keep pushing.
Congressman Davis, at the end of the day, I mean, isn't it up to Congress to authorize war? I mean, why haven't the Republicans now lead both houses? Why haven't they simply demanded that Obama come to Congress and make his argument?
They don't want ownership of the outcome. I think Tim Kaine is exactly right. I mean, Tim, I know the frustration you feel. Congress has just marginalized itself in so many areas, not being able to get their approps out, not giving up earmarks, which is the power of the purse, and then stepping away from the war resolutions. It's really marginalized itself as an institution. I know how frustrating it is for you.
And you kind of wonder if there's a Congress that will sue the president over an executive action over immigration or other executive action, but then they wouldn't want to have ownership of war, and they say to the president, you can go ahead and wage it unilaterally without us weighing in, even though that's a clear power reserved to Congress under Article 1. So this has probably been one of the biggest surprises that I've faced, coming into the Senate. I never would have expected that a Congress which professes not to really support this president so much would be so willing to hand him the unilateral power to make war. It's creating a horrible precedent, because I can imagine a future president saying, hey, wow, I can wage war without Congress, and doing so under circumstances that would be, not ideal for the nation. So it's important that we try to reel this back in.
This is Tom Davis again. We've almost morphed into a parliamentary behavior, in a balance of powers government. Yeah. When you think about it, the minority party becomes the opposition party. The president's party in Congress becomes an appendage because their destiny is intertwined with the success of the president. And it's difficult to get, independent thinkers or what I would call institutional a base for Congress to act now. They've lost their ability as an institution. They become appendages of their party interests, and we got to get it back, Tim. I think this is a great initiative you're undertaking, and good luck.
Tom, and Senator Kaine, isn't the bottom line here? I mean, Republicans are in leadership. They can simply demand this. Isn't the bottom line that Republican leadership doesn't have the kahunas to be able to demand that the president come in because they don't want to take ownership of it if something bad happens? I mean, isn't that the bottom line? I mean, we can all sit here and throw our hands up.
John, Democrats as well. I mean, I wish I could say this was all the Republicans not willing to step forward, but the Democrats have been equally unwilling to have a vote on this. Because a vote on war is going to be hard. I mean, under the best of circumstances, there will be deaths, there will be injuries. We've lost 17 service members already in Operation Inherent Resolve, and they're kind of like these forgotten names because we haven't had the guts as Congress to stand up and authorize this military action. And but it is a bipartisan abdication of responsibility, frankly, at this point, and it does marginalize the institution. We got to get it back.
The members were so burnt on their vote on the Iraq War, which is misconstrued. Yep. This was just an authority. It didn't say go to war. It just gave the president broad authority so they could get the weapons inspectors in. And then the way the war was conducted ended up just being a black eye for everybody who voted for it.
Yeah. Thanks, John. And just sort of a thought for Tim and Tom to comment on, which is the notion here that what we seem to have gotten into is this idea of limited war. We never used to have limited wars. You went to war or you didn't. And now people seem comfortable with these air incursions against ISIL or what happened in Bosnia and what have you. So we don't think of it as full-blown war. And I guess people want to give the president the opportunity to tilt the scales in favor of the team that we want to prevail in those circumstances. And again, I agree that people don't want to be responsible for the outcome, but that's what's confused things. Because if you make a declaration of war over something like ISIL, then people have a right to expect, hey, it's the Colin Powell principle. Either you're all in or you're not. And let's put ground troops on there. So they're very comfortable with these limited kinds of actions. And I think that's what's kind of thrown some dust in the air that's confused people as to what war is and what war isn't.
Well, because there's just no leadership.
That's a good point. And I would add one more, and that is war against the non-state actor is a very different kind of a thing than war against the state. Most of the doctrines that we have, most of the thinking about war, even that was included in the Constitution, kind of assumed that war would be state against state. And so the rise of non-state power, Al-Qaeda and ISIL, which is a fundamental reality of the world we live in now, these groups don't follow the Geneva Conventions. They don't follow the rules of war. So I get that the conceptual project trying to define what it is has gotten more difficult. And so to that extent, Congress is grappling and the president is grappling with a harder challenge, but there's still no excuse for abdicating the responsibility.